Good day. Today is October 22nd, 2025. I'm Derek Fildebrandt, publisher of the Western Standard, and you're watching The Pipeline. I'm joined by two of our regular co-hosts, Western Standard BC columnist, Alise Mills.
Hi, everybody.
There she is. And Western Standard former opinion editor, now senior columnist, Nigel Hannaford.
Good afternoon. Good to be back.
And you can see sitting between us, the rose between two thorns, filling in for Cory Morgan, who's off on jihad right now. We've got Lindsay Wilson, who's, I don't even know how to introduce you. Formerly of Alberta Proud, worked on the Jeff Davison mayoral campaign here, and joining us today, particularly as we talk about fallout of the Calgary election.
Yes, well, thank you very much for having me today.
And you were actually filling in for Cory Morgan on the Cory Morgan show today. We called you in for that, and then we sat down to do this, and I was like, oh my God, where's Lindsay? She hasn't finished her job today if she actually doesn't do Cory's spot on the pipeline.
Well, I'm happy. You can't call me Cory Morgan, but that's
Cory Morgan. You're Cory Morgan. Okay, you know what? We're just going to do two topics today, so we can really kind of suss it out. We're going to see how that goes. The BC Conservative shit show continues to get shittier by the day. More defections from caucus, more chaos as the leadership of John Brostat continues to come under fire. How long can he last? Will he last? We're going to get into that as the BC Conservative Party, so promising a year ago, continues to just fall apart into disarray. But first, ding dong. Gondek is gone. Calgarians can celebrate that now former mayor Jody Gondek went down to a historic defeat Monday night. Oh, we found out. We found out about it Tuesday, but the numbers from the early reporting was clear enough on Monday night. We didn't necessarily know who was going to win, but we sure knew who was not going to win. Jody Gondek became the first incumbent elected Calgary mayor since 1980. I wasn't even born since 1980 to lose re-election. And she became the first mayor in the history of Alberta, the first mayor in the history of Calgary, which is older than Alberta, to not even place second. She came in third place. Just an absolutely... I don't want to be a jerk and kind of gloat, because losing an election sucks. I don't want to dance on the political grave, but I'm going to. God damn, I'm happy. Bad news for her, but I think great news for Calgarians. Calgarians, I'll start with you, Lindsay. As I said, you worked on the Jeff Davison campaign. You're not a neutral observer here, but it's an opinion show, so that's okay. There was a lot of division over who should replace Jody Gondek as mayor. Farkas came in a narrow first, still subject to recount, but likely to stand. I think Sharf would need to pick up between 600 and 800 votes net. Not likely to happen, but it's close enough that a recall should be done. I said not recall, a recount. Farkas coming first, Gondek in a close second, Jeff Davison coming in fourth. And then I guess Brian Thiessen coming in fifth, kind of splitting the left vote, but it wasn't enough left vote to split in this one, arguably. So we'll get into council in a bit. Your candidate didn't win, but I don't know, how hard was it then, I guess, to stand out as for the candidate to say, I'm the one to beat Jody Gondek? And was that the major question, or was it more on policies?
Well, this was an anything but Gondek vote that won this election, certainly. And now we have a mayor-elect, Jeremy Farkas, and Jeremy has won with a very, what is his mandate, right? 26%, I think, a margin of just under 600 votes.
He won with, this time, less votes than he lost with last time.
Which is so interesting. So I think he has his work cut out for him. I think, and in transparency, some of the people watching this may or may not know that I did work for Jeremy Farkas once upon a time. I helped him run a mayoral campaign last time. This time I was with Jeff Davison. No regrets on either side of those things. We live and we learn and we move forward. And I think I do want to say that I am congratulating Mayor-elect Jeremy Farkas, and I want the best for Calgary, and I want the best for unity, for sure, for Conservatives. And I think Jeremy's got a lot to prove. I think people felt like he lost the last election. He went and hiked a mountaintop and found a new version of himself. And the term has come out a lot, Jeremy 2.0 versus Jeremy 1.0. What's that going to look like? There was some perception that while he has some very strong Conservative roots, that something happened on that mountaintop and on that big walk that he did in the name of charity. And it was all very respectable and great and a huge accomplishment. But something happened there. And now that he's kind of more associates with more of the left side of the spectrum. So I think a lot of us are really interested, is he going to have more of a centrist appeal? And will that be really good for the former rabble rouser who, maybe not perceived as the most collaborative of the bunch when he was on council? And will he be able to build those bridges and to get this slate of very independent dominated candidates? I mean, we just came off of a show where we were talking about the party system, what that's going to look like moving forward, but he's definitely got some work cut out for him in this independent advantage.
And to clarify, you're not speaking for Jeff Davison here. The campaign's over, so you're speaking for you. No, it's kind of more background that you were on the campaign. I was. So, not a neutral observer, but you're not speaking for the campaign, just for yourself here. Nigel, it was. You were privy to some of the discussion. You're not here full time anymore, but I mean, the discussion around here about who to vote for was, I've never seen our newsroom so split. When Farkas ran in 2021, the newsroom was like unanimously Jeremy. He was the most conservative candidate, and he was the most likely candidate to beat Gondek or Nenshi. This time. I always tease him. I called it his Forrest Gump run when he went on this thing there, and a lot of time to think and reflect as you burn the calories. But he was a very different candidate. He's certainly not as strident and outspoken. He tried to make the argument to me that he's learned and matured, but he hasn't fundamentally changed his convictions. I don't know. That's to be seen. He's at the very least less strident. And maybe that just means he's more diplomatic, but he is fundamentally the same guy. I don't know. I think a lot of conservatives still, even though he didn't run as explicitly a conservative campaign this time, he was so known as the conservative guy last time that a lot of conservatives still voted for him. Some people in the center who probably voted for Gondek last time, thinking, I like her. He definitely won some of those switchers, but he lost a lot of his core support to Sonia Sharp and Jeff Davison. Jeff Davison obviously had some support for last time he first ran, but do you think Albertans elected a conservative?
I honestly think that remains to be seen for all the reasons that you've just given. He seems to have had some kind of an epiphany, and we'll see what he does with it. We'll know when we see where he tries to lead the gang when it comes to looking at the rezoning bylaw. Are we going to walk that back? We're going to get out of that arrangement and give people their property rights back. That was the issue, even more than plastic straws that got Calgary.
Not for me.
Well, okay.
Plastic straws above everything.
What crime and safety, though? Don't forget about crime and safety. How will he get on
second to plastic straws?
Yes.
He has 580 plastic straws in boxes in his office, so that he knows whereof he speaks. Mm-hmm. But I'm saying that for the rest, there was no other issue that got people out of their chairs and down to City Hall like the rezoning issue. And to be honest with you, I thought that this was going to be the revolution. I thought people were going to be marching down to the voting booths to register their disapproval of everything that had gone before. And certainly in as much as Mayor Gondek is now retired Mayor Gondek, former Mayor Gondek, through the 5 stages of grief and the time it took me to finish the sentence, many people feel the same. But all right, that got done. But what about the rest? So there is the question of how they move forward on rezoning. And what do we do with the Green Line? There is another thing. So those are 2 areas where there is a conservative position and there is another position. And I will answer your question about how is Mr. Farkas going to look when I see what he decides to actually do with both of those issues.
Let me rephrase the question ever so slightly. Do Calgarians think they elected a Conservative?
Yes, I think they probably do.
I think largely.
Yeah, I think they do, which is what makes the whole thing a little bit of a waiting game. And the possibility of disappointment is out there. We were going through the list this morning, and as near as I could confirm anything, given the fact that some of these people didn't really open up who they were during the campaign, I think it's like 6 Conservatives out of the 14, which is an improvement on last time when on the day after the vote, I think maybe we had 3 Conservatives and the rest were a little on the left, and of course with a very left-leaning mayor. Now you make a few basic assumptions about the parties and the individuals, and you can kind of put it together. There's just about 6 Conservatives there, and then a bunch of people we really don't know where they stand.
I think there might be some centrists in there, like truly. And I know, say, well, is there anything such as a centrist? But I think some of those people that are defined as more left-leaning, I think they might be more community-focused, which is really where we need municipal politicians. It doesn't need to be so much about left and right either. I think we're going to see some people, hopefully, that are in the middle. I think some of the really divisive personalities, I will just say Courtney Walcott, Courtney Penner, they were perceived as very divisive, left-leaning councillors last time. I'm hopeful those are maybe out of the picture this time, and it's a little bit more moderate. Mm-hmm. And I think from the right, I think what we were talking about earlier today, that Landon Johnson might be the new Jeremy 1.0, mm-hmm. right? So I think that'll be really interesting.
Okay, so we'll talk. Okay, I want to come back to council. We'll talk maybe just about the dynamics of the race a bit more. One of the most decisive questions for a lot of people was who can beat Gondek. Now, all the different campaigns, the not Gondek campaigns, were putting out polls regularly saying, "Look, my campaign is the one to beat Gondek." And I've been around the block enough to know that. Okay, when a campaign puts out a poll, it's obviously they're trying to get people to vote strategically. And so I generally don't trust polls put out by campaigns. They do internal polling, and that's the stuff they don't share. And that's the good stuff. That's actual good, hard data.
Stuff they're not supposed to share, but some of the campaigns did end up sharing that. And it does create a false narrative, but it works.
Well, and then it's something that's like, oh yeah, we didn't mean to leak this, and they intentionally leak it. So, the one I really put a lot of weight in was Jenna Brown's poll. She's got a pretty good track record. She mostly-ish predicted what was going to happen here. Mm-hmm. Municipal's harder to predict, I think, because voter turnout tends to be so low. Nigel, you have the numbers.
It's just been getting worse and worse every year. We think it didn't quite make 40%. I think it's 38.4. 33, is it?
And it was 30 up in Edmonton, and I think a lot of it's due to these long lineups that we saw.
Well...
No, it was 38.9 this time.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah. 46.4 in 2021. But
and it was over 50% in 2017 and more again in 2013. So it was a diminishing
But a lot of times it just depends on the issues and the structure of things. Like the last Alberta election had an increase in voter turnout, I believe. But I thought John was nodding no, but he's actually just scratching his eyes. Something on John. And last time, there was just such a clear dichotomy. Gondek on the left, Farkas on the right, and then you also had Jeff Davison. But it was such a clear-cut race that people didn't know who to vote for here. So I think a lot of people just didn't vote because it was so unclear. So anyway, the different candidates putting this stuff out. The Jenna Brown poll came out and said Farkas was leading, and then it essentially had Gondek and Sharp more or less tied in second.
Yep.
And Davison in fourth, Thiessen in distant fifth. I think that probably influenced a lot of people to vote Farkas. Mm-hmm. But I think even more so, it probably influenced Davison people to then vote for Sharp, because that said Davison can't win. He's running fourth. It was a respectable fourth, but it said he couldn't win. So he probably underperformed the polls because of that. I think, but But Davison, I know that campaign had been saying the whole time, we can win. We're the ones who can beat Gondek. I know you have to say that,
Yep.
but like I was like, come on, like you're not going to be in position from fourth. You can't leapfrog to fourth in the last few days.
I think there was a lot of resources. There's a tremendous benefit to party politics in the sense that there's a lot of resources. And at the end of the day, I think, Communities First with Sonia Sharp had significantly more resources than the Jeff Davison campaign did. Because if we're talking about issues, there wasn't a lot of differentiators, you guys. Yeah. Blanket rezoning. Okay, we're all going to repeal blanket rezoning in some form or another, a little flip-flopping there. But at the end of the day, that was the commitment. Crime and safety. Let's get tough on crime and safety. Let's, partner with the province to shut down the Sheldon Schumer. So there was those issues, but affordability was the number one thing. And you guys, I will tell you, in our last couple of weeks of the campaign, our messaging, which I think to the degree it could be was effective, was all around Jeff Davison's promise for a 4-year tax freeze. And that really resonated with people because affordability is the number one issue in the city.
There was so many people that I talked to who said, I actually would like to vote for Jeff Davison, but he's not going to win. So I got to pick between, and that was just what you were up against.
I know. And it was really difficult because, I will maintain, and for everybody listening, like Jeff Davison is a tremendous candidate and human being. And we had a beautiful campaign filled with really, really good quality people and absolutely no regrets. But yeah, it was an uphill battle. He was the underdog. And in the end, Sharp, I was surprised. I didn't think that she would get that high. I thought she appealed, even though I don't really truly believe that she's truly, really a conservative. I think she being painted that way. And I just thought it would be more appealing to a far right crowd. And hey, I was wrong. I've been wrong before and I'll be wrong again. I didn't think she would appeal to the moderate base as much as she obviously did. But, within 600 votes of Mayor-elect Jeremy Farkas and a recount to come. Again, I don't think we're going to see a lot of change in the mayor's chair. That's just too big a margin. But any campaign manager would advise her to do that. And that is the respectable thing to do.
I don't think that's sour grapes for her to request.
No, not at all.
No, it's with it. It's totally reasonable. All right, well, let's talk council. I'm sorry, we not including Alise really here yet, Vancouver. But I would expect. I would expect someone from Vancouver to have about as much insight into Calgary's municipal politics as I would have into Vancouver.
Well, we did know about Gondek. We did, believe me, we know about your mayor or former mayor.
Yeah,
we
for good reasons.
We prayed a lot for you. We really did. So, the way to get high turn.
Our prayers have been answered. So thank you for sending
welcome.
Good vibes our way. Okay, let's talk about council. So Lindsay, I think Nigel said there's roughly 6. I know Common Sense Calgary put out something today, which I think was pretty reasonable, saying, broadly speaking, there's 6 center-right councillors, 6 center-left councillors, and I think 2 just unknown, kind of more
and was one of the unknown centrist people, maybe we can look this up, is that John Pandazopoulos in 6?
Ward 6.
Ward 6, and he perceived as not part of the 6 because I think he will end up being part of the 6.
I don't know.
I think he's more conservative leaning, and I think
you gotta watch the Greeks.
Yeah,
that's the only thing I know about him is he's got a difficult Greek name. That's the only thing I know about this guy.
Yeah.
So we've got. I want to ask you about the party system here. So, I've been saying this whole time since we got municipal parties in Calgary and Edmonton that I think it's going to take a few cycles for things to come out in the wash before it kind of gets settled. There was one left party. The Calgary Party, and then there was Community First on the center right and ABC on the center right. Communities First and A Better Calgary, all very imaginative names. Sorry.
And that is the trouble. There is absolutely nothing in, and this is, as per Bill 20 provincial legislation, you can't put conservative or NDP or liberal or anything. And that's, I think, what voters are looking for. And you got to think people have 1 minute a week for politics, the average voter, and they have even less than that for municipal politics.
It's supposed to give people a short
and it created confusion.
Yeah, it didn't settle that at all. I think the reason they didn't allow them to use names like conservative, liberal, etc., is that the Alberta UCP, the federal conservatives don't want, some guy gets nominated as the conservative councillor in Ward 20 and he says something a little off color. And then, then they have to go ask Danielle Smith and Pierre Poilievre, what do you think about what this guy in Ward 20 said? I think that was it. But the point is, there's independent left elected, and then there's Calgary party elected, there's independent right elected, and then there's people from two different parties elected on the right. Because most are Communities First, but there was one, a Better Calgary party.
Yeah, Better Calgary party currently has Ward 12 with Mike Jameson,
Yeah.
and they're hanging on by 29 votes. I know there's going to be a recount there, and that's happening.
Yeah.
And then
That one could flip. That's close enough.
And then you have the Calgary party with one seat. So you have ABC,
yeah.
you have Calgary party with 1 seat, and then you have Communities First technically with 4. But I do want to, because we should be very clear that 2 new seats. They lost a couple, and then you had 2 very, very strong councillors in wards 10 and 13, Dan McLean and respectively Andre Chabot. And I think it's very fair. Anybody would agree that they would have been elected regardless of a party system. They gave legitimacy to the Communities First party as far as being perceived as a conservative party, if any.
Yeah. So I think, assuming we have the one ABC candidate and a few Communities First, they're going to form a natural block together. I don't imagine that there's the kind of antagonism that existed, say, between Wild Rose and Progressive Conservatives, where that went on for over a decade, and we hated each other's guts until we finally faced socialist hordes that get across the aisle from each other.
No, because quite frankly, it's embarrassing and it can't continue, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of bad blood. I think that took place in the election, and I think everybody needs to just have a truce and work together.
So, but I'm thinking in the long term, do you think it's likely those two parties come together? It's 4 years.
They have to.
You think
They have
those
to
two
or
parties
they're
come
gonna have to
together?
turn into a third-party advertiser. They have to. Either that or they just dissolve them. But I don't think they're going to. I think this was a pilot project. I think, I hosted one of your shows earlier this morning, and it suggests, okay, nothing's going to be perfect the first time out of the gate. I think there's some changes that myself along with I had, Amber Reddy and Stephen Carter on that show. And I think, there's some things like maybe higher threshold for creating a party, getting access to the voters list. Like there's some things that definitely need to change.
They didn't have access to the voters list? What the hell is the point of a party if you don't get the voters list?
I know. It's a real problem. So I think there's
You
just
can't name them correctly, and you don't get a voters list. I
and
don't understand why we have these parties then.
Exactly. Like it was just a real uphill battle. And, I do want to give credit where credit is due. I give credit to a Better Calgary party. I think, they ended up and, I did help originally build that party. And then I kind of parted ways with them on very good terms. But to me, a Better Calgary party, they did try to do what I think a party should be, which is, democratically elect their member and they have the memberships vote on who they want to be their representatives. And I think, and Communities First, it was a slate. It was never a party. It was a slate. And it was very confusing with their branding. It's strategically probably very smart for them, but it was very confusing to people because you had these candidates running under the Communities First banner, but unless you saw them in a photo op together, you would never know that they were part of a party, that it wasn't displayed on signage. It wasn't clear in a lot of their marketing. And I think that's confusing to people. I would like to see something like, hey, if you're going to be part of a party, you got to put that front and center. The Calgary party executed on that. ABC candidates executed on that. Whether you agree with those parties or not is beside the point. They were very clear. Hey, we are a party. These are our candidates. And I think that we need that clarity moving forward, or it's just going to, you're going to have more disenfranchised voters because they feel like they're being duped. And that's
What do you think about the name Communities First anyway? Like that has a socialist feel about it. That's the kind of woke community involvement type of person who would gravitate to that.
Well, I think so too. I think you could almost say that about any of the party names. I think Better Calgary Party, Communities First. I don't really think that any of them connote. The naming is just like everybody's trying to appeal to the moderates, and that's it's what it is. And no criticism of their individual branding, but the name itself doesn't connote anything. But I mean, Communities First, they put themselves forward as a conservative party. Certainly, they had very respectable conservatives. They Dan McLean and Andre Chabot in 13 and 10 fronting that party, and they chose Sonia Sharp as their candidate, who was perceived as a conservative. Don't know that she really was one, but was perceived as a conservative from Ward 1. So, they put that, I don't know how that's, I don't, then they had a Ward 9 candidate who was like an ardent NDP activist, I think is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
She attended NDP conventions as a delegate. So what are you? It's interesting.
And actually, you were talking about John Pantazopoulos. His campaign manager, did he have connections to the NDP?
Correct, he did.
Yeah. So,
but I think John himself appeals as more of a moderate conservative and is a businessman. It comes from that perspective. So I think he might end up siding a lot with more the conservative.
just let them come out and say, we are the party of the overdog. Remember this? Anyway.
Okay, well, if anyone from the Alberta cabinet is watching, any UCP MLAs, give them the friggin' voters list and let them put reasonable names on their parties. What a mess. Okay, we've kept Alise on the bench long enough for putting her on the ice. John Rostad, the BC Conservative leader, he took that party from nothing and really made it into something. Some of it was catching lightning in the bottle, maybe, and the BC Liberal United Party did a lot of the work in collapsing themselves. But the guy deserves a lot of credit for what he did. Came within just a hair of becoming premier a year ago, but the promise of them as this government in waiting that they could maybe try to topple the quasi-ish minority government, that they were on the doorsteps of power. And it has just fallen apart. I have no way to describe it, but just a total shit show. John Rostad has now lost his fifth MLA. Proportionally, if you were to take, in terms of caucus sizes and the size of the legislature, this is going to be damn near as much as Stockwell Day lost when his leadership came under a lot of trouble with the Canadian Alliance in the day, and that was enough ultimately to topple him. And Stock, actually a bunch of us, I think maybe all of us know Stockwell. Great guy, but but when you're having to kick people out of caucus in numbers, when you have them leaving caucus in protest, there comes a point where you just can't take any more damage. He's just lost his fifth. He's lost them on kind of the left and the right of the party, it seems. The last one to go, I don't recall the name. You'll tell me in a second, Alise. But she leaves the caucus, and then John Rustad says, "Wow, she's got mental health issues." I don't know this person. Maybe she does, but I mean, if that was the case, why was she your candidate? Why was she in the caucus? That just seemed like a really personal attack to try and justify what was happening. Alise, what the hell is happening in Lotus Land out there?
I have to tell you, it's a clown car, and there's a lot of people in that clown car. Just speaking on that candidate, you should also know that it's a legal issue. And I would recommend, and I have recommended, that she speak to Catherine Marshall, because Catherine Marshall, this is her territory. What had happened with that MLA is that she had privately gone to the leader and said, I think there was a family matter and she was struggling with her mental health. She needed a break. She's the critic for Ministry of Children and Families in British Columbia, which is, if you believe in the devil resides in the Ministry of Children and Families. It is a horror show in there. And I think as a woman, I think it does affect you maybe differently, and that's okay for us to say that. I think that it was difficult for her. And so she went to the leader, as she should, and she said, "Hey, John, I'm having a bit of a struggle. I need to take a bit of time off." And she wasn't talking months. She wasn't even talking weeks. And then he proceeds to tell everybody that he's supporting her. There have been some problems in caucus. Some people thought she was too left-leaning, sort of very similar to the conversation that all three of you have just had about municipal politics in Calgary and political parties. Are you really a conservative is sort of the question that goes around. And there's some ardent, hardcore, very right-wing conservatives in that caucus. And so John backed her, and then a day or two ago he jumps out and says, he shares this privileged information, technically as her employer, and breaches all of the standards
he is not her employer. There would not be any employment relationship. Like, the leader of a party is effectively the boss, but legally speaking, the employer would be the Legislative Assembly of British Columbia.
Yes, exactly. Oh, and I just want to say, I wish BC Conservatives, when Lindsay Shepherd was fired, nobody understood who the employer really was, and that there are employment standards. You can't beak off and say whatever you want to say. But the point of this is that she had gone through the right protocols, and he steps out. And not only does he break that confidence and therefore creates a huge liability for the party and a huge liability for her, He then claims that the woman he's been protecting and supporting is a secret Hamas supporter. Like it's very Joe McCarthy. You're a communist. You're a communist. You know, it was so we actually.
I didn't see the Hamas thing. That's
oh my God!
He said she was a secret Hamas supporter of some kind.
Yeah, a sympathizer, and so I have to tell you, for me and my jaded colleagues, and I would say that there's a lot of first-time MLAs in that caucus. They were horrified. I had one whose voice was cracking. I had another one who told me that his entire family was calling him, and his wife was telling him how disappointed she was in him, and that he was worried about this MLA's mental health. It was absolute chaos. It was that shit show going on. The other thing is that me and my colleagues were standing there watching us, and I have to tell you, we were laughing our asses off at one point, because it reminded us of that show In the Thick of It with Malcolm Tucker. It was just absolute chaos. And it wasn't, we weren't laughing about the mental health, but when he did the overreach, jumped the shark, suggesting that she was some sort of Hamas secret agent or sympathizer in the caucus, to us, that was just a bridge too far. But from that point on, it really speaks, and it has spoken. And I would say that, John, what may not be visible or obvious to the observers across the country, or who haven't had a firsthand or a front row seat to the John Rustad show. When he became leader, and I'll be very honest with you, there were a lot of us that had worked for Gordon Campbell, including myself, in communications that, I've known John 26 years, I think it is. And I know what his strengths are, and leadership definitely wasn't one of them. But we needed somebody that was charismatic, that could bridge the 604 and the 250s together, which is, our resource communities, how this province works, with the First Nations communities, and then with Metro Vancouver, which Conservatives or right of center have a hard time breaking through, or have had a hard time breaking it through. But it has been one ridiculous and sometimes even offensive error. What goes on in that little fiefdom of the leader's office is embarrassing. The other thing is he's got 3 prominent, hardcore former NDP organizers and a federal Liberal now and there. And he's gotten rid of all of his conservative, or I don't even know if there was a lot of conservative stuff, but his inner circle is NDP and federal Liberal. And you've got one of his new assistant director or assistant chief of staff, Ryan Painter, has a reputation for decimating female conservative pundits like myself. I have a litany of things I could accuse him of. And he had started an apology tour with me. I should have known then that there was something up. He was flipping over to the conservative side. But getting back to what's happened, as of 11 o'clock Pacific time today, the board of the party has finally written John Rustad a letter, and they have, it's a traditional, typical, we don't support you, we'd like you to leave. But what you can take away from this letter, which differentiates it from other letters or other situations like this that I've witnessed or participated in, is that they don't even tell him that they want him to stay while they choose an interim leader or decide on what the leadership looks like. They want him gone ASAP. And by the way, don't let the door hit you on the way out. And so that makes it very different. This is also a very new party. And I think what John Rustad always, and your viewers and even maybe some of you won't know, but John Rustad, when I was with the BC Liberals, took a hard run at my boss, at Gordon Campbell, or at least in Rustad land, it was a hard run. And he failed. I believe he always wanted to be leader. And what he really liked, and what he still, I think, covets, is the 2009 to 2011 BC Liberal Party, because we were a machine in communications. We were getting more conservative. We were probably presenting more social credit. And we were getting a lot of attacks in with the NDP. I'm very proud of that time. And I think what he thought when he took it over, because it was a cakewalk. He just grabbed the leadership and took everybody out to the election, basically. I think what he thought he was going to do is create that that certain period of time of the BC Liberal Party and put it into the BC Conservative Party. But he doesn't. His follow through it has always been terrible. He has I think he has a little ADD. I don't think he understands how to put things together, what the expertise and the team that needs to be there to have that type of discipline and consistency, because the two things that John Rustad's team isn't disciplined and consistent. And there is a level of pure meanness that is notorious or infamous when we think about that leader's office too. So anyway, I don't suspect that he'll make it past the weekend. But he obviously can't come out and resign right away when he receives that letter, because he needs to look like he's in control.
Yeah. It's I thought for some time it doesn't look like he's gonna be able to hang on. I talked to some folks I know or have met in the BC Conservatives about what's going on there. I said, and early on, I was like, especially when Rustad expelled 2 MLAs from the right wing of the party, and I said, it's growing pains. You guys, your growing pains of the BC Conservatives are so much easier than it was for Alberta Conservatives. We had this war that went on forever. You can go back to essentially like 2001 with the Alberta Alliance and transforming into the Wild Rose Alliance to the Wild Rose Party, and then eventually into the United Conservative Party, and then that is old. Even the UCP has only achieved peace really ever since Danielle Smith won the last election. There wasn't even peace in that party when it became the United Conservative Party. So it was like, you know what, you guys, you avoided even having a single election against the BC United Liberals. Your war is much cleaner. You'll figure it out. Find a way to bring those 2 back in, make peace with them. They do not seem to have done that. They have doubled down on chaos. Now, and I don't know all of these individuals. Maybe, new parties, new MLAs, you're going to have, it's not as established. The politicians are not going to be as polished, which is a good thing in many ways. But at the same time, it means they're also more likely to be rambunctious and rebellious. So, maybe John Rustad is just the only adult in the room and everyone else is crazy. Possible. I don't know everyone out there. But Lindsay, it doesn't look to me like that could be the case at this point. He's lost 5 MLAs from the left wing and the right wing of the party.
They've lost his donors. You got to remember the party is carrying a significant amount of debt. There isn't one person that wants to give him a buck. And it's not because they don't want to help the party, but they have told John, and I know this for a fact, they have told him the taps are turned off, and it's been going on for a long time now. And the final warning, the final push came just, I think, 36 hours ago. I was speaking to somebody very well connected and is known to be a good donor to the party, and just said no, because there's also questions about where some of this money has gone. This story is not just about a guy that said something that at best was really mean and stupid, and at worst litigious or legally made us legally vulnerable. This goes into management. It goes into is there negligence there? There's a whole bunch of problems, and the BC NDP is likely to call a spring election, because this is good as it's going to get for EB, and he's got his own knives out in his caucus. So there's a lot more to this.
All right. So Nigel, it's Liz Truss. I was very sad to see what happened with her. I really like Liz Truss. I think she could have been a really great prime minister if she had more than like a week or 2. Like, it was so short-lived that her premiership. But I remember I don't know if it was Daily Mail but one of the major British publications had a head of lettuce and said, which will survive longer, Liz Truss's prime ministership or this head of lettuce. It was pretty funny. If I was to put a head of lettuce in our newsroom right now, Nigel, which one do you think lasts longer?
After listening to Alise, I think the head of lettuce has got it by a long shot. The one thing that I'm wondering here is there somebody and I guess I should be directing this to Alise, is there somebody in the party who is the obvious replacement, or is the power base so distributed that it's going to be a a fist fight, even trying to find a new leader to take over from Rustad, should he do the right thing and resign.
Well, I think the way that it would go, and I think this is the agreement amongst the gentleman's handshake agreement amongst caucus and the party brass, is that there's a gentleman by the name of Ward Starmer, unfortunate last name there, but there's gentlemen like him that I believe, and I might be wrong, have agreed to be the interim leader. So you need somebody that's steady, that the caucus really likes. But after that, the leadershiping, the politics of it, that already started today at the Truck Loggers Association luncheon, where all the bigwigs and all the political fixers and movers and shakers, they go to this lunch. And John Rustad was supposed to speak there, and I don't even know if he ended up showing up, but I can tell you there are some people out there that are pushing certain candidates. So I know of at least 3 at this particular moment. There's definitely people that can take over. The question is, the people that are trying to push that are formerly BC Liberal types like myself who haven't learned the lessons. You know, I left the BC Liberals when Christy Clark really turned that into a corrupted machine. I am looking for real conservatism. I do not want somebody that's had some position as a spokesperson somewhere. I want somebody that's had a real job before this. I want somebody that understands what real people really need and to grow the party along with them. And there is a particular candidate that I have my eye on in regards to that.
All right. Well, maybe that'll be on the next episode. We got to put a pin in it there and go to our parting shots, starting with Nigel.
Well, you know, Mr. Guilbeault, he's always good for a bad quote. He came out yesterday and said that the CBC needs to have more money so that it can conduct unbiased local reporting. I have to wonder whether Mr. Guilbeault knows what unbiased reporting is, and for that matter, whether the CBC itself knows what unbiased reporting is. I mean, it's just the first decision is, what do we even report? And they ignore the right.
All right. Alise.
My parting shot is to the Carney Liberals who betrayed Canadian manufacturers and Canadians across the country this week when they decided to support the UN's taxes and levies or global carbon tax for marine traffic. 30% of our GDP is tied to pushing our products out across the waters. And it's an absolute betrayal. It's also one of the worst cases of doublespeak. You oppose the carbon tax, but you won't actually get rid of it, the consumer carbon tax in Canada. You kept the industrial one. And now the UN, who should not even be in the business of taxes and levies, that is not their lane. You've empowered them through this legislation. The other side to this, very quickly, is Trump. The Trump White House for several months had warned the Carney cabinet and Carney himself, you support that, we will retaliate. This story, I think, if the media, and over to Nigel on this one, if the biased media actually took a look at the story, there's a can of worms there.
All right. Lindsay, this is your first parting shot.
Okay. Well, I think I want to close this loop on the municipal election cycle as somebody who was working on it. I proudly worked on the Jeff Davison campaign team. We lost. We have a new mayor-elect, Jeremy Farkas. And I think we need to stop dividing. We need to approach this from a place of unity. We need to empower these newly elected councillors across this province with the tools, with the experience, with the wisdom, so we don't have this division and we don't have this left versus right at the municipal level. I think, a shout out, Lindsay Clark took it down in Medicine Hat, and that's really interesting, as she had lawsuits and she had all of this stuff, and it's seen as a real vindication. She took out popular conservative choice Drew Barnes, former MLA, and that's a really interesting story. And out where I live in Cochrane, we had another councillor who was elected, Marnie Fideko, who had also taken on administration, incurred a lot of legal bills. So I just want to say that it's really hard to be an elected official, and when you're having these battles with administration and being silenced and being muzzled, we do need to help these people and stand up for them, regardless of what side of the political spectrum that they stand on. So shout out to those two for their victories in the municipal cycle this season.
All right. Well, I want to call out the pearl clutching legacy media for its wild reaction to Pierre Poilievre's comments about the RCMP being political. That's saying that's the reason why Justin Trudeau's never faced criminal charges. Justin Trudeau has broken some major laws during his time in office. The police should, not target someone just because they have a high public profile. Wink, wink. I can tell you that. But neither should they do the opposite and look the other way because someone has high public profile or is politically powerful. The RCMP is not above criticism. This would be different if Pierre Poilievre was in power and he was directing the RCMP to file charges. That would be over the line. That's not the way our system works. That would be, or if Pierre Poilievre was prime minister and directing his attorney general to not press charges against someone. That's not the way the system is supposed to work. But the pearl clutching around this, he has, as opposition leaders said, the RCP is political. That is why nothing has happened here. And just the absolute meltdown. Oh, he's Donald Trump. Just like Donald Trump is using the legal system to go after his opponents, like Donald Trump's opponents used it to go after Donald Trump, for God's sakes. It is just myopic and mind-numbing how these people have approached it. My hope is that Pierre Poilievre stands up to the withering criticism that he's getting here. My gut tells me that he has enough disdain for them that he's not going to back down. I really hope he doesn't. Okay, Nigel, Alise, and our special guest, Cory Morgan. Cora Morgan. Lindsay Wilson. Thank you very much. Thank all of you for joining us today. Remember, the Western Standard relies on people like you to subscribe and become members. It's only $10 a month or $100 a year for unlimited access. Just go to westernstandard.news, click on subscribe, and you'll get unlimited access to all Western Standard content, and you'll stop freeloading off the other people who are paying to keep us doing the work we're doing. Thank you very much for joining us today, and God bless.